Hello, my creeplings. I'm back. I'm going to go back to the 90s for this one, and we're just going to go ahead and finish out this particular series of films. This is the second Tales from the Crypt presents. This one is Bordello of Blood. If the first one was campy, this second one is even campier. So directed by Gilbert Adler, screenplay by A.L. Katz and Gilbert Adler, story by Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis. Robert Zemeckis, huge name in the 80s, 90s. What was it? So many things. So many things. My brain just stops and wants to say 15,000 of them. You know the name. You can look it up for specifics, but yeah, prolific director and writer, producer. Distributed by Universal Pictures, so possibly in the future, if Universal Studios wanted to ride the nostalgia train, we could have a Demon Knight, Bordello of Blood, Tales from the Crypt, touch at a Halloween Horror Nights. I do know in the past that the Crypt Keeper had been the face of Halloween Horror Nights. I think it's about time we bring our Crypt Keeper back, don't you think? Although I do love me some Jack. Just a note, I've never been to Halloween Horror Nights, but I do like keeping up with it and the stories because some of the original houses, their story are set in Cary, Ohio, which is supposed to be around the Sandusky area of Ohio. It's a fictional town. A handful of the original creatives on Halloween Horror Nights in the early days when these original houses started coming out, and they were from Ohio, so they used that kind of idea as a thing. And when I found that out and I did a deep dive, I was kind of like, oh, Halloween Horror Nights is cool. I'll probably never be able to afford to go, but I love the concept. I love the idea. I love watching the travel videos on it. So bring back my Crypt Keeper to Halloween Horror Nights and I'd be a happy little bitch, even though I probably wouldn't be there. But I'm going off on a tangent here. Movie was released August 16th, 1996. So summer release on this. Budget was $2.5 million and box office was 5.6. So it made its money back, but not a whole lot. And we'll talk about what kind of the nail in the coffin for that was going to be. Side note, it is still allergy season where I'm at. So I may wipe my eyes and I may sneeze. And I'm going to try not to sneeze. If I do, I'm going to hopefully be able to edit it out. But if you see the weird wrinkly nose face or any of that, it's just because it's allergy season. We're also in the middle of a goddamn heat wave. So if my air keeps kicking on and off and it's audible and I can do this without having to scrap this video, we're going to do it. But it's too damn hot. It's Ohio in the summertime. It's just too damn hot. Okay, so we start the movie with a cold opening. Actually, I'm going to stop that. Go back. We're going to talk about the cast list real quick before I start talking about the movie. Just because this is a Tales from the Crypt movie. It's pretty star-studded. The television show always had, names. They might not have been huge names, but they were well-known names. Either they were what you would call working actors. A lot of them were character actors. Some of them were people who their star never quite hit really high, but they worked regularly, that kind of stuff. So we have the comedian Dennis Miller as Rafe Gutman, one of our main characters. Former Playboy playmate and Baywatch beauty Erica Laniak as Catherine Verdeaux. Some of you will also remember her from, I believe, Under Siege with Steven Seagal. Former model. I think this was early in her career. This may have been her first starring role in a feature-length film. Angie Everhart, as Lilith, beautiful statuesque redhead. Chris Sarandon. So horror fans would know him as as Jerry Dandridge in the original Fright Night. Your children may know him as the speaking voice of Jack Skellington, and those hopeless romantics will remember him as Humperdinck in The Princess Bride. And that's just a handful of things that he's done that I can think of off the top of my head. We have Aubrey Morris as McCutcheon, and Phil Fondacaro as Vincent Prather. Now, Phil Fondacaro is an interesting one. And again, I'm going to apologize if I'm not quite using the correct terminology. It feels like whatever is acceptable is changing daily. And I don't want to offend anybody, but Phil Fondacaro is a well-known little person actor. He's an LP. I believe that's the term that they use, little person. I want to say he's got a form of dwarfism. That's the physical, like what the doctors would have diagnosed at birth. Please don't quote me. I am not a doctor. I am not a physiologist. And it's been a while since I've looked up his filmography. But anytime you needed an LP actor in, especially from the mid 80s to the early 2000s, it seemed like Phil Fondacaro was usually there. Things he's been in: Willow. He played one of the warriors from Willow's Village. The original Troll movie, he was in that. This movie, and there's a handful of others, and I can't remember the names of them, but like I said, if there was a need for little people actors, and it was more than one, more than two, there was a really high chance one of the group was Phil Fondacaro. But I don't think this role was specifically written as a little person role, so it's really nice to see him get cast just because he was the best for the job, and not specifically because we need the best little person for the job. Whatever reason he got cast, I always enjoy seeing Phil Fondacaro. We also have two cameos. One by Whoopi Goldberg later, and then one in the opening, not the cold opening, but the Crypt Keepers section, by William Sadler from the first Tales from the Crypt movie, Demon Knight. One thing I am going to say for my terminology: I will often refer to this and Demon Knight as spin-off movies from the Tales from the Crypt television series. And I say that because there is another Tales from the Crypt movie that predates the television series by like 20 years, if I remember correctly. It came out in the 70s. It was called Tales from the Crypt. It was an anthology movie. 3 stories, maybe? There's a part of me that wants to say Joan Collins was in it, or Karen Black. I could be wrong on one or both of those counts. It's been a very long time. I may get a hold of it and talk about it for the channel, but that'll be in the future. But that's why I'm so specific about saying these spin-off films. It's to make sure that anybody who kind of halfway knows about that movie from the 70s doesn't get confused. But going back to the movie that I just watched, Bordello of Blood, the second of the spin-off movies. We open with a cold opening. Sorry, I gotta switch my page here. Following a group of treasure hunters led by Vincent Prather, so the Phil Fondacaro character. They are in the jungles of Tierra del Fuego. They are looking for a cavern, which they find, containing a treasure. Turns out the treasure is a coffin. The coffin contains a shriveled up, desiccated mummy-esque body that Vincent was specifically looking for her body. He's got a box with 4 dried up, desiccated hunks of meat in it that are separated by 2 pieces of wood, creating 4 sections. He takes the dividers out. The sections are no longer separated. They all fuse together in a really cool effect. It becomes a human-esque heart, which he then puts into the mummy's body, which resurrects this beautiful woman who turns out to be Lilith, the first vampire, mother of all vampires. They're going with that form of the legend. She wakes up, she kills all the other treasure hunters except for Vincent, because Vincent has the one thing that can subdue her, and it is a key that looks exactly like the key from Demon Knight. Now, I don't drop my notes. Give me a second. Sorry about that. I don't know if this was meant to be the exact key from Demon Knight, because he does mention something about the blood, the stuff in here is what keeps her at bay. So, you know, the blood of the Savior. But it could also be one of the several other keys that was mentioned in the story of the keys. It's never explained, but from what I understand, that was supposed to be the gimmick, the thing that tied any of these movies together, because they were originally going to do a trilogy and then maybe see if they could keep going from there, but after this one, that was all dead in the water. But each one of those movies was supposed to have a version of this key, tying everything together. So in this one, this version of the key subdues the mother of all vampires. So we cut and go to the Crypt Keeper's prologue. He is in a restaurant with the Mummy, played by William Sadler. So we have a carryover in cast from Demon Knight to now. And it's William Sadler. We love William Sadler here on the channel. We are character actor bitches, as I like to call myself. I hope all of you guys are too, especially because, you know, the genre we talk about, horror and sci-fi, uses a lot of character actors. Well, we love William Sadler over here. The man played Death in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. He was in the fucking Shawshank Redemption and then Disturbing Behavior. The guy knows the genre. He always puts in a really good performance, and I'm always happy to see him show up. So, yay! So the Mummy is boring the pants off the Crypt Keeper, talking about industry stuff. Things get a little spicier when the Mummy challenges the Crypt Keeper, who, yes, by the way, is still voiced by John Kassir in this one. Yay. I don't think they could ever get anybody else to do the Crypt Keeper, unless they were finding someone to specifically sound like John Kassir. So why not keep having him do it? But I digress. So the Mummy challenges the Crypt Keeper to a game of rock, paper, scissors, which the Crypt Keeper loses the first round, and the Mummy gleefully pulls a cleaver out and chops his hand off. The Crypt Keeper, of course, isn't hurt by this. He cackles gleefully and challenges the Mummy for another round. Now, this is kind of an Easter egg, a poke back, if you will, to the Assassin episode of Tales from the Crypt. I like when they do tiny little callbacks like that. It's kind of cute. But before they continue the next round, the Crypt Keeper, of course, turns to the audience and introduces the story, and we don't see him till the end of the movie. Now, the story we're going to tell tonight involves siblings, Catherine and Caleb Bordello, and other people in their lives. Catherine and Caleb Bordello are adults, but Caleb is a younger adult that lives with his sister still. She is a very religious, I'm not going to say prim, but very proper, very, modest woman. And Caleb is your typical 20-something metalhead punk who's only out to have a good time and get laid. So, of course, they're going to butt heads. And we start the movie with them having an argument and Caleb, saying fuck you and fucking off. The language in this review is probably going to be really bad. Potty mouth movie, potty mouth metal. That's just the way it works out. And this movie's got a potty mouth. So Caleb goes to a dive bar with some of his friends, and you're shooting darts, and they mention something about, just trying to go out and get laid, like horny guys of that age do. And they are having this conversation when a very odd biker named Jenkins kind of butts in, and he's like, and he talks about, if you want to get laid, there's go to this funeral home and ask for, I think, the Hutchinson wake. There's a bordello, a brothel, hidden in this funeral home. So Caleb he drags his friend Reggie. At first he's put off because it seems like this is a joke. McCutcheon, the proprietor, he's creepy, creepy. And they're like, no, man, we're done. We're going to bow out. Well, McCutcheon basically forces them into a coffin at gunpoint and sends them down what looks like the crematory chute. It's a cover for the entrance to the bordello, which I'm assuming is in the basement. And, they are just greeted by boobs and half-naked women, and, they're happy. They get separated to go, do their thing with their respective, dates. I'm going to be at a loss for terms here, because there's so many to use. But it turns out this brothel is a front for Lilith and all of the girls she has turned into vampires. Every one of these girls is a blood-sucking bitch. Feminine power. Gotta love it. Reggie gets killed. Caleb, we don't know what happens to him. Fast forward a few days. Catherine's at at the police station saying, my brother's been gone for a handful of days. Yes, he's fucked off before. Great, she hasn't said fucked off. Yes, he's run off before, but he always comes back. This is the longest he's been gone. Well, the police sergeant is like, I'd love to help you, but I'm up to my neck. I think he might have said I'm up to my asshole. He's drowning in missing persons reports. So, okay, notice point. We have a lot of missing persons lately. Dennis Miller's character, Rafe Gutman, is hanging around the police station for whatever reason, happens to overhear this conversation, and offers Catherine his services because he's a private eye. He's cynical and sarcastic, and obviously not a very good one because it seems like he's broke and can't pay for anything. But she's like, okay, I'll give you a chance to find him. He tracks Caleb's whereabouts, he tracks Caleb's steps that night, gets to the bar. One of Caleb's friends is there, actually two of them are. They end up directing him to the funeral home. And he runs into Jenkins, the weird biker. And so he finished. So Rafe's like, okay, I'm going to go to the funeral home. Now, initially, it appears to just be a funeral home. He's turned away by McCutcheon. But, of course, he's a private investigator. He sneaks back in. And he happens to overhear Lilith interviewing a woman named Tamara about a job. And he ends up starting to leave, but he hears her scream and then the thud of a body hitting the floor. He does some more snooping and he finds Caleb's nose ring and he manages to escape. Now, the next day he takes it to Catherine and tells her he's going to stake out the funeral home. Now, Catherine, you find, works as a producer for a very stereotypical Southern Baptist-esque television preacher, televangelist, played by Chris Sarandon. So he's Reverend, what was it? Reverend Current, J.C. Current. So the current Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. So, yeah. But what you don't know until later is that, old Reverend Current's kind of involved in this. Sorry, I have an itch. It's the other side effect of allergies is I get itchy skin. So Gutman goes back the next night. He's finally admitted to the brothel, where he is approached by Tamara. He calls her Tammy. She takes him into a room and tries to go all dominatrix on him. Well, he ends up tricking her into strapping her down to a torture rack so he can investigate further. He finds Jenkins' body in a coffin because Jenkins goes to Lilith during the day and is whining about how he can't fucking stand it because it turns out, I dropped my notes, give me a moment, he was about half turned and he kept trying to go out during the day and he's whining, and so she just decapitates him and they throw the body in a coffin and call it a day. So while he's there, Rafe loses his wallet, which allows Lilith to find out where he works, his office. She gets a taste of Rafe's blood from Tamara, who had it on his fingers, and she's like, ooh, this is a rare blood type. I haven't had this since, like, Ivan the Terrible, which is, like, 4 centuries ago. So, of course, she's obsessed with this, apparently, you know, it's like a fine wine to her. She takes an interest in him, shows up at his office and tries to seduce him, and he's just like confused. It's interrupted by Catherine. Lilith leaves, and Rafe kind of follows Catherine to her car and explains what the brothel, you know, what was going on, where her brother might have been, and all that. So they try to go to the police, and they dismiss Rafe as a fraud because, you know, lack of evidence, and his investigator's license is expired, and when he went to go renew it, the check bounced, and Catherine's like, oh, so you're just trying to get money out of me, you'll make up anything, and she tries to, you know, end his employment. Meanwhile, Catherine has also mentioned to Reverend Current, JC, that she wants to do an expose for their, you know, God network on pleasure vices like stripping and prostitution and all that. Well, he's like, fine, yeah, sure. Well, later that night, this is the same night that Catherine and Rafe are talking about the brothel, before she leaves him, JC shows up in disguise, the trench coat and sunglasses type of disguise, to a strip club where Lilith and Vincent are discussing expanding into clubs like that. This is where you find out that Reverend Current had her resurrected so that she could kill sinners. They are interrupted by Catherine coming in to do her expose. She just barges in, no permits, no nothing, just asking people point blank, why are you coming here? Why do you need to sin? What's the... So, of course, the two guys fuck off because she knows both of them. And Lilith, of course, is like, yeah, I'm here, and getting filmed, and Catherine's, oh God, you must be sick. And she's like, oh, do you want to play doctor? The thing about Lilith is, and I want to say this was a director's choice because this does not seem like an Angie Everhart talks like this, like a normal human being. She pulled that very kind of Jessica Rabbit-esque breathy husky voice out, and almost everything out of her mouth is a double entendre or that level of naughty. It's either got a naughty tone. They really went over the top with her, which it worked, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was not unhappy with it, but it is, if you want something sophisticated, you ain't getting it here. Okay? But while Catherine is getting strong-armed out by the bouncers and the owner of the bar, all that, Lilith meets the boys in the back alley, and there is a scuffle, and Vincent destroys the key, so that now Lilith has no one controlling her. But Vincent's still working with her, and they let JC go so he can watch the carnage that they're, going to be responsible for. Now, we go back to the next day. We go back to Rafe and Catherine. Rafe follows the funeral home people to the cemetery, where he manages to take pictures of the coffin with now two bodies in it, the person who was supposed to be buried and the biker's body. He gets the pictures back, and he notices that only one of the bodies photographed. At the same time this is happening, he heads over to go talk to Catherine. Catherine's noticing that Lilith didn't show up on the video. You can quite clearly hear her answer the questions, but she's not there. So, they're having a meeting to kind of talk about this and compare notes when Caleb calls. And Caleb calls for help, asking, he says, meet me at the power plant. They get there, they crack a joke about it being like a Tales From The Crypt episode. And how creepy it is, and we find out that Caleb has been vampirized. She's been turned, and there's a struggle. Rafe gets knocked out and picked up by the police, and Catherine is kidnapped by the vampires and taken to the brothel. Rafe wakes up in the hospital, bound to the bed. Deputy Dipshit from before, Sergeant Dipshit, whatever you want to call him, is there, and he ends up getting killed by the nurse, who's actually Tamara in disguise. There's a struggle with Rafe after he manages to free himself, but he gets lucky, and Tamara is defeated by the sun coming in. Catherine awakens tied to that same torture rack. Caleb's there. She begs him to free her. And he's fully drunk the Kool-Aid. Controlled by our, redheaded menace, Lilith. And he's actually quite enjoying himself. So Lilith, the other thing about Lilith is she is very bisexual. And for the time, 1996, this is overtly bisexual, which is great for the step that it took, but it's almost comical at how overtly bisexual she is. She's gonna, she's planning on feeding on Catherine and all this stuff, and she feels her up, and yeah. So Rafe has escaped, loads up on super soakers full of holy water. Squirt guns full of holy water. Where did we get that idea from? Oh yeah, another Corey Haim movie. The Lost Boys did this same thing. Still effective though. I like it because it's not overdone. He raids the brothel. He manages to kill both Vincent and McCutcheon, and he runs into JC. JC is also there to stop the madness. He's strapped for bear with wooden stakes. He also drops the info that you can't kill Lilith like you kill a regular vampire. You must cut her heart into 4 pieces. Doesn't give the rest of it. You find that out later. So Rafe tosses him the smaller of the 2 water guns he has. These 2 raid the brothel and just start going at it. This is a huge fucking vampire slaughter. The effects are amazing. We've got flaming bodies. We have exploding bodies. We have melting bodies. And we have a lot of boobies flapping around in the breeze. We see some of the girls that were featured in, some of the before scenes. We have new girls. And they all end up slaughtered. And they all end up exploded, burning, gooing. The effects team had their hands full, and they did a very, very good job. None of them ashed out, though. So I'm going to give you guys something to think about, and maybe to put down in the comments if you so feel. What's your favorite way of seeing a vampire die? Do you prefer them to ash out, like in the Blade series? Or do you prefer something a little gorier, like what we would see here? Or the holy water garlic bathtub in the Lost Boys? Or something else? Your favorite kind of vampire death? Put it in the comments. I really want to know. So they also killed Caleb. They managed to free Catherine. But Lilith kills JC. And Rafe wounds her pretty good, though, with a double-headed axe. He gets it right through here. And again, really good effect showing that. They end up at the mega church's studio. Catherine's going to broadcast and tell everyone. And Lilith returns. She manages to subdue and handcuff Rafe to a railing, and she goes to attack Catherine. Rafe gets smart and manages to maneuver himself to use there is a laser that was supposed to burn a cross shape, I believe, in the floor for some dynamic thing at their next Sunday service. The thing about JC is he's also what I would call a rock and roll preacher. Uses the gospel chorus to accentuate his sermons and carries a fucking electric guitar around, kind of like if Elvis became a televangelist. And this is the kind of character you love to hate, and I believe that's why he was created the way he was. Rafe manages to activate that and uses it, and it gets Lilith through the back and quarters her heart. And she goes and approaches him, and she's like, oh, he only told you half the story. Yeah, my heart may be cut into 4 pieces, but it's, you know, it's got to be out of my body to kill me. No sooner has the bitch said that than Catherine comes up behind her and starts staking her from behind, and the heart pieces come out. Lilith devolves in this hideous form while she's attacking Rafe. Lilith's body burns and collapses. They take the ashes and have it consecrated with the help of a rabbi, and they lock away the box with the heart pieces separately. They're leaving. So this is kind of the aftermath. You think everything's okay. Rafe starts flirting and fondling, and for some reason now it seems like Catherine's more into it. And they get in his car and he starts, you know, nibbling and you know, getting close. And she, you know, before she was like, no, you're disgusting. Now she seems to be a bit more into it. He makes a comment about her perfume, and she's like, oh, it's not perfume. It's sunblock. At the same time, he's pushing her skirt up. You see 2 puncture wounds on her thigh. So she had been turned by Lilith. She's now, you know, a vampire. She flashes her fangs and goes in for the kill, and the camera pulls out, and you see a little of it happening in the car. Before we pay, excuse me, we fade into the epilogue, where the Crypt Keeper, you know, his signature brand of humor, like says if they got married, she'd at least know what's eating him. It's her. I do like that joke. He has also apparently bested the mummy, who's now, you know, in bits and pieces, and his head's on the chair, saying, no, I can still beat you. But, of course, the Crypt Keeper looks at him and goes, you need to quit while you're ahead, and does his signature goofy laugh. And that is the end of the movie. The first one was the better of the 2. But this one is cheesy camp. This level of cheese is like, this is not just Cheese Whiz. This is off-brand canned cheese. It is guilty pleasure indulgence of squeezy cheese on a cracker. Levels of cheese. I personally love this movie. Whenever I want a good laugh, I put this movie in. And I am not a huge Dennis Miller fan. Speaking of Dennis Miller and other things, there were some changes and some casting things. So there's some history and development. I did mention Whoopi Goldberg had a cameo. She is one of the patients in the hospital. It's a blink in and you'll miss it. She says one line and that's it. We're going into the history and development of this. Robert Zemeckis had originally wrote this story with Bob Gale back in '73 when he had graduated college. So it was knocking around for a while before this was made. They wanted to break into the film industry by making an exploitation film of a whorehouse full of vampires. So you got to remember, exploitation was huge in the 70s. It was cheap to make. It was very popular with certain circles, and it was easy to get into independent theaters, which means you had work and you could break into the film industry. It's not so much a genre that we appreciate now, but back in the 70s, it was big. The original script, though, was, you know, some of the early producers were like, the script is pretty damn good. But these guys ended up doing the movie 1941 instead, which got their careers going. So this movie the script kind of sat on a shelf until Demon Knight did really well. And Universal Pictures decided to greenlight 2 more. One of them was supposed to be a New Orleans-based one called Dead Easy or Fat Tuesday. I don't think they decided on a name for it yet. It was a zombie film set in New Orleans. But It didn't even get through pre-production before it was shut down. The producers also considered Quentin Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn with a few tweaks before it got made as its own movie, as well as Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. So those could have been Tales from the Crypt movies. But instead they got made as their own films, which I'm grateful for. I haven't seen The Frighteners in years. I should probably sit down and watch that. But I digress. Now, during the development process, when they were knocking back and forth what they were doing for movies, Robert Zemeckis was offered a contract with DreamWorks, which now seems funny because DreamWorks has merged with Universal, if I remember this correctly. And he was considering leaving Universal. If he would have left Universal and stayed working when the merger happened, he would have ended up back home. But I'm digressing again. So in order to appease him into staying, Universal agreed to revise Bordello of Blood and make it the second Tales from the Crypt film. Now, Grant Adler brought in because he was a showrunner from Tales from the Crypt. Corey Feldman, being friends with producer Richard Donner, was brought in. He was also in an episode of Tales from the Crypt before. They originally wanted Daniel Baldwin, the younger Baldwin, the kind of unknown Baldwin, as I call him, to be Rafe. And Brigitte Wilson to play Catherine. And then Robin Givens was considered for Lilith. So it gives you kind of an idea of what we could have had. Joel Silver, though, the executive producer, really wanted to bring Dennis Miller in to play Rafe. And I think that's kind of why the story might not seem so... Like, he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, tone-wise. Because they had to rewrite a lot of the Rafe stuff for Dennis Miller's persona, line delivery, his shtick. Joel Silver was also like, no, I want Angie Everhart to play Lilith. So again, he had an idea that the supermodel actress was the next big thing. And I mean, for a while there, it was. Models were turning actress left and right. But a lot of models do end up successfully turn actress. I mean, you got Brigitte Nielsen, Red Sonja, I believe she was a model beforehand. Bridget Wilson, who they wanted to play Catherine, was originally a model. Erica Eleniak, who ended up playing Catherine, was a model and ended up Playboy Bunny. So, actress turned model can be, a thing. But when that's the main reason, I want to make a supermodel into an actress. But I will say, Angie Everhart, she made Lilith into a memorable character, so I'm going to give her kudos for that. Dennis Miller didn't even want to make the film, so I don't know how they made it, why they kept pursuing him. He said he'd do it for $1 million, but Universal didn't want to, put up the money for that. So Joel Silver cut money from the special effects budget, which is why this movie's not very gory. We have our big vampire, we have our big vampire bash scene and the Lilith stuff, but that's it. The gore's not, Demon Knight's definitely more effects heavy and more gore heavy than this. This is definitely decently gory, but now you know where all that money went to get fucking Dennis Miller, who didn't even really want to do this. If I were Universal, I would have kicked Joel Silver in the nuts and said, shut up. He doesn't want to do it. We're not gonna shuffle the effects. Because I think Dennis Miller might be the weak link in this. And it's not that I don't like him. It's just, I don't like him in this. But going back, movie was filmed in Vancouver because, again, Joel Silver had issues with the union, having past disputes with him. And the Canadian production crew was a bit inexperienced. So again, that could be why this one doesn't feel as cohesive as the first one. They also had very limited night hours that far north in July and August, because of course you're going to film a movie in the summer with the shortest night during the section of the year with the shortest nights to do a vampire movie where you got to film at night. Some of the heads were not on straight for film scheduling here. Dennis Miller hated the scripted dialogue and again rewrote and improvised nearly all of it. The shoot had to be rescheduled to work around his show, Dennis Miller Live, and the Canadian crew really hated him because the filming schedule prevented them from seeing their families on weekends. Some days, Miller's assistant told the production he was too tired to show up, which meant that some of his scenes had to be shot without him, with the script supervisor standing in for him. So the cast wasn't really happy with him either. And the poor script supervisor that's standing in can't remember all the improvised dialogue, which, and again, led to continuity problems. Now, Katz, the writer, one of the screenplay guys, has said that after filming began, Erica Laniak's manager told them she would not show up to the set unless significant portions of the character were rewritten, because she found them quote-unquote unacceptable. She apparently left Baywatch because she wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, and she allegedly did not want to play the character of Catherine as previously written, because Catherine in the original draft was a former porn star. There's a line in there where Rafe is like, I swear I know you, where do I know you from? She's like, no, you don't know me. Now, Katz claimed Catherine was scripted as being a stripper, and Adler and Katz rewrote the script and changed these aspects of the character so she would come back. However, she disputes this claim. She says changes were made to the script because she got cast, and they wanted to make this character Catherine a little sexier, so that they could put that Lilith and Erica Laniak, pseudo-lesbian seduction scene in there because Silver wanted it. That was not originally in the script. She actually said she was disappointed that due to the rewrites, the backstory of her past as a... Now, she was supposedly a 300-pound former porn star named Chubby O'Toole. She even recalled later that she wore special makeup effects that were created for a brief scene in which Catherine discovers a Chubby O'Toole poster in Rafe's office. So that would be where he knew her from. But of course, she got out of the business. She dropped the weight. She became a pious woman who works in this now, Christian network. I can see that would have been cool. Keep that in. That would have been an interesting layer to the story. So it sounds like, we need to take Joel Silver out and smack him around with a wet noodle for fucking up what could have been really cool. Because looking at this, and again, it sounds like I'm ripping this movie to shreds. And while I adore the product we got, this is going to be going back to what I said about Cursed. so much had changed from let's greenlight this movie as Tales from the Crypt, Bordello of Blood, to what ended up on the screen as Tales from the Crypt, Bordello of Blood. And I would have loved to have seen that original movie shot. Kind of like with Wes Craven's Cursed movie. This movie was shot to about 90% before studios stepped in and said, no, we got to do something about this. Proceeded to scrap most of it and refilm a almost completely different movie, and that's what ended up on screen. I'm kind of in that same boat where I want to see the original stuff and then compare it to what came out. Because that original one with Daniel Baldwin as the Rafe character, I think would have been better. Because again, it's not that I don't like Dennis Miller, I just don't like him in this. I'm okay with Erica Eleniak as Catherine, but I would have loved the Chubby O'Toole stuff to stay in. Angie Everhart as Lilith did, a good job, so I'm not knocking that. She's just a bit caricature-y, but that works with Rafe Gutman, played by Dennis Miller. I don't know if that would have worked with Rafe Gutman, played by Daniel Baldwin. These are just my thoughts and musings. Tell me what you think below. But, due to Dennis Miller being Dennis Miller, he told people not to go see this on a televised appearance. Now, it did gross $5.6 million. Critics didn't like it. A lot of the fans felt like it didn't feel cohesive enough to be there. I really think they were comparing it to Demon Knight, which came out a few years before that. But it got its fan base. It's now part of the Cult Classics series. It's got its fans, and I'm one of them. Now the third film, they didn't make it after this. Now, the third film, I guess, was supposed to be called Ritual. I can't find much on that. I actually kind of would have loved to have seen the Zombie New Orleans one, the Fat Tuesday, the Dead, whatever they called it. But yeah. This is, a hoot. This is a campy hoot and a holler, as some of my more countrified relatives would say. I'm definitely recommending this if you liked the first one and if you liked the television show. This is a slice of 90s loveliness. It doesn't have the effects budget that the other one did. Thanks, Joe Silver. Thank you. And what we could have gotten might have been cooler than what we ended up getting. But yeah, I am definitely going to say watch this one. Watch this one, tongue-in-cheek. And like I said, just be aware that we are talking about a bordello. We were talking about prostitutes. So there's going to be boobs aplenty. So I'm probably wouldn't show this to anybody, younger. But yeah, definitely you adults. Find a good beverage, sit back, have your guilty pleasure, cheese on crackers moment, and go for it. Bordello of Blood, part of the Tales from the Crypt series. I highly recommend. But on that note, I'm going to go kind of look through and see what I've got coming up. Make some plans for the channel. But I do want to thank everybody for being along on this ride with me. I really do kind of wish you guys would be more active in the comments, just because I want to talk to you guys. I want to know what everyone's thinking. Even if you think the movie sucked, tell me why you think the movie sucked. Come on, guys. I can't be the only one who loves these movies or hates some of these movies. Let's get a dialogue going. But on that note, I'm going to let you guys go for the evening. So, good night, my creeplings. And, say it with me, I'll See you next time. Bye.